Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
I'm bathed in sunlight.
Speaking of bathing, would you like to stand up and show people what you're wearing below your waist? Mickey, would you
No,
like to do
Bob.
that?
That's only for paying viewers of my
We'll do that in the Parrot
OnlyFans
room.
site.
We'll go, folks.
OnlyFans
We'll
site.
go further than that in the Parrot room. Well worth the money.
That's a lively issue in Democratic politics.
What? How
Because
far to go in the...
this candidate in Virginia, uh, for the the Virginia State Senate was revealed to have tried to raise funds by charging viewers on a site called Chatterbait, great title, to watch her pee, Bob. In addition to having sex with her husband, but she didn't stop at having sex with her husband. And
Could
so
you
there's
choose
also
just one or the other? Like,
yeah, I think it's like a
get a discount if you just watch one.
Paper act. I don't know if there's a group, a bonus if you bought the whole schlemiel. But anyway, there's a big controversy over whether whether this should count against her. Yes, obviously, and whether the Democrats should sort of rally around her or force her from the race. And Matt Cooper wrote an article saying, no, let the voters decide. Well, that's fine, but the voters should decide this is disgusting and they don't want this person in office. That's my line.
Well, I'm sure the voters will follow your guidance as usual. So, Mickey, let me give you a little news quiz. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Lex Friedman, you're familiar with the famous podcaster.
I am clothed.
Let's be clear. Mickey is clothed. So go ahead and show him. You got nothing to hide. Stand up.
I'm wearing some bathing trunks. It's summer.
Prove it.
I say? I want it to be loosey-goosey for this podcast.
Lex Friedman. You're familiar with the famous podcaster Lex Friedman?
Yeah, vaguely familiar. Not 100% familiar.
He's
fused with various people.
What writer did he refer to this week as one of the greatest writers of all time? If I've got
Good Lord. Robert Wright.
Disappointingly, no. However, it is someone you know.
Good Lord. Someone I know. Mike Kinsley.
No. You're getting closer, I think.
Marty Parrot.
No.
Getting.
You want the answer? I'll give you one more guess.
Okay.
No, that means the ball's in your court.
You're not going to give me a
That's like when somebody says...
I thought you meant one more clue. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's how my brain is working today.
Okay.
Great writers of all time. Christopher Hitchens.
No.
Obviously
Walter Isaacson is one of the great writers of all time. Second question. Who was Lex Friedman speaking to when he made this judgment?
Elon Musk.
Wrong. Walter Isaacson. If you were familiar with Lex Friedman's interviewing style, you would have been able to guess that part. Yeah, he tends to have a very high opinion of people he's interviewing and to not hide it. Now, what another news question? What writer had to somewhat embarrassingly walk back an important claim made in a book that he just published that is sure to be a #1 bestseller nonetheless?
I didn't quite understand. He walked it back. It was Walter Isaacson, but it wasn't much of a walk back. I mean, it was. The question was Elon Musk. The Ukrainians were staging this drone strike on the Russian Navy
early in the war. These are drone submarines, by the way.
Right. And they wanted. Okay, and they wanted Starlink coverage for Crimea, and Walter's original account in the book makes it sound like they had the coverage, and Musk said, "No, we can't let them do this. We'll start a nuclear war. Let's cut it off."
Right.
And the correction said, "No, they didn't have the coverage," and they asked Musk to extend it, and he said, "No, just for this attack." And he said, "No, that would make me look like I am endorsing this attack," and he didn't, and the attack failed.
Yeah.
Because you didn't. Okay, that's a walk back, but
I mainly
I don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know what pressures Musk put on Walter. Might not even be an accurate walk back. I mean, I just don't. The whole thing is a mess.
I think it's an accurate walk back. I've heard him talk about it on a podcast, Walter, that is. I bring it up mainly because some commenter accused me of getting it wrong, but I was just repeating what Walter had said in the excerpt from his book in the Washington Post. And I think there is a very significant difference. You know, he just let the status quo be. In fact, there was some suggestion, I think by Musk, that U.S. sanctions he had taken to prohibit him from extending Starlink coverage to Crimea, which would make sense, actually.
Why?
Well, because it's the kind of thing we would do, say, as long as Russia is occupying Crimea, you can't do X, Y, and Z with Crimea. I don't know. Why did your screen just go blank? Are you eating?
Because I ate a bite of croissant, Bob.
You want to know a podcaster tip, Mickey? Mute your microphone as well when you're chopping away. Okay?
You could hear that? I charge extra for that. I charge extra in the OnlyFans site for hearing me chew.
And that's what I said. You got to mute it here. And then when we get to the Parrot room, we chomp away and people pay money. Okay, so another question, moving on. This is my final news quiz question. Some weeks ago, in discussing the possibility that Biden would somehow be shoved off the ticket, which pretty much everything but Joe and Jill, everybody but Joe and Jill want to happen.
Not Sidney Blumenthal, Bob. He wrote a piece in The Guardian saying that people like you are nervous Nellies who are going to cause the Democrats to go down to defeat. There's nobody to replace Biden. I think he's right about that.
He's wrong about that. The only good argument.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. First, let me give you the question. So you had said a few weeks ago, well, what you need if you want to get him off the ticket is some prominent columnist to go out and say it. You said, and Peggy Noonan's helping. She said it. That's good. And I said, well, that doesn't help. She's considered a conservative. She's the Wall Street Journal. So this week, which somewhat prominent columnist came out and basically said, get off the ticket.
Yeah, David Ignatius said that, and Nancy Pelosi waffled on TV. She's pretty prominent.
Did she? Really?
Yeah. So, no, this is people are realizing it's now or never for pushing Biden off the ticket.
Right.
So we have a momentary window of candor when the press is actually reporting that he lies constantly about little details, something that they might not have reported about earlier.
That was weird. So CNN did a whole segment on that. And it's like not news. He's been doing this his whole life.
Right, but the press is now he's now in a free fire zone.
Good.
I tend to think in the fight between Sid and Peggy Noonan and you, I tend to think Sid is right that it would be great to get rid of Biden. He's not, he may be doing a reasonably good job, but he's not getting credit for it. All the polls show, he's neck and neck with Trump. He loses to Mike Pence in one of the polls. My God. But, opening it up now to a free for all, if there were an obvious candidate to replace him, that'd be good, but there isn't. And that person would start in a hole versus Trump as far as name recognition. And it's just much easier. If the age is the issue, and I think it's the main issue, if age is the issue, it's much easier to switch out Kamala and get one of these people who would be running for president if you open it up as a plausible backup insurance policy. So you get Gretchen Whitmer there as vice president. You don't have to do a whole analysis of Gretchen Whitmer. She's okay. And that would stabilize the ticket, and people could vote for Biden in confidence that Kamala Harris is not going to be president in 3 months.
Mickey, there is no way in hell he's going to swap out a black woman for a white woman. It's not going to happen.
She has to take herself out. She has to take one for the team. Somebody has to tell her you have a future in this. You have a future in politics, but you have to take yourself out of this race.
I think somebody has to tell Biden you have a past in politics, but no future. That's what I think.
But what I'm saying is that your solution does not work. There is no replacement. my solution works.
Mickey,
it reassures voters that there's a backup.
Mickey, there are good questions to raise about my scenario. The good one is, would this not lead to a bitter fight that left the party divided and blah, blah, blah? That's a good question.
For one thing.
But if the question is there a single person in the Democratic Party who will do better than Biden in the election? A better question is there a single person in the party who would do worse? It's not hard.
Do you have any polling data to back that up? I'm not sure.
It's just so fucking obvious that if you imagine Biden on the debate stage and then imagine Chris Murphy, there's so many people, and Chris Murphy is not Mr. Charisma, but there are so many people, or Gretchen Whitmer, there's so many people who would clearly outshine Trump on the debate stage, and almost the only person who doesn't is Biden.
Oh, I'm not sure that those people outshine Trump on the debate stage. Trump is
easily.
Pretty good on the debate stage.
He's older. He's losing a little. I don't think. And also, people are basically sick. Look, there are enough people who are sick of Trump that it's not like you have to just outwit him for 90 minutes. It's just like, look like somebody who's not an asshole.
There are enough people who are sick of Trump that they'll vote for, an old man if they're assured that he has a backup. I mean, that's people are sick of Trump. I agree with that. He has, and Biden has the democracy issue to bash Trump with, which he wouldn't against somebody like
the
DeSantis.
Polls show that people know what the democracy issue is, and the polls show it's not giving Biden the edge against Trump.
It's going to be a close race, but I'm worried that I think that if we nominate Gretchen Whitmer, it might not be a close race. She'll lose by 10 points.
I don't know about that. I don't think so. I don't know that much about her.
I know nothing about any of these people. That's the problem.
Well, here's my question.
But I would happily accept her as a number 2. That's my point.
Here's my question. You look at the betting markets, and you know who they put as the most likely non-Biden candidate to win the nomination?
Bernie Sanders, probably.
Gavin Newsom. Now, my question is, nobody thinks Bernie Sanders is going to run.
He leads in the polls, but that's because of name recognition. But go ahead.
And I don't know anything about Gavin Newsom except that I don't like the looks of the guy. He just looks and seems too slick and off-puttingly slick. You know, he's like the thing that Trump was the antidote to. Like Trump, if nothing else, seemed to people authentic, right? Like, oh, he'll say the shit nobody else will say. Gavin Newsom is like the opposite. Newsom
is an authentic douchebag whose personality would probably turn off a lot of people in flyover country who aren't used to seeing people like that every day. On the other hand, he's on a campaign of Mr. Normal now. He's California just yesterday said it's okay for state officials to travel to states that don't have transgender bathroom laws that Californians dislike. So he's pulling back on a lot of the crazy stuff that his state has done over the past couple of years. So he knows what his problem is, and he's a smart guy, and he has some centrist instincts. So it's not beyond the pale, unfortunately, that he could be president. But I think you're right. I think he has an unwitting personality, but that goes against your theory that almost anybody could beat Biden, could beat Trump, because he couldn't beat Trump.
I'm exaggerating for the sake of effect.
Doesn't work.
I'm exaggerating for the sake of effect. But the point is, if you're saying you couldn't find somebody who do better than Biden, you can find plenty of people. So anyway, final question on this. Yeah,
I'm not giving up on the Kamala thing, and the knives are out for her too. Pelosi definitely did a double take where she refused to endorse Kamala. As they're now asking the question, is she the best possible vice president? And of course, she's not. If they asked, do you support her for vice president, Pelosi might have answered yes, but they didn't ask that. So that's very clever of them. So the knives are out for Kamala, and we're now at the point where one little scandal maybe could push her over the edge. And
how about this as a substitute for Kamala? And granted, this is someone who seems to have a history of actually not winning elections, but very appealing, smart, and not white.
Stacey Abrams.
Exactly. VP,
I go for that.
I'd go for that.
I mean, she's so ambitious that it sort of hurts her. She's refused to concede.
What do you mean?
And keeps, but
that.
Some Republicans.
That's a common thing in politics these days, as you know.
And but she's really smart, and she's much smarter than Kamala. And the problem is, when you see her interview, she's great. When you see her on the stump, she instantly becomes a hack Democrat. If she's so smart, why can't she figure out a way not to be a hack Democrat?
Of course, my thesis is a hack Democrat can win if under the age of 80. Anyway, final question.
I'd go for that.
Final question.
ABK, anybody but Kamala.
Do you think there is some degree of orchestration? I mean, it's funny on Twitter, some people in response to the David Ignatius column, at least one person, this was somebody on kind of the far left, was serious when they said, look, of course, David Ignatius is his national security reporter. His column is very much a reported column, very dependent on sources in the national security establishment. And somebody on Twitter said, when Ignatius wrote that column, said, this means the CIA wants Biden out. They were like seeing Ignatius as a...
I didn't hear your last statement, but I'll react as if I did. I don't think Ignatius takes orders from the national security establishment, but he probably sounded them out and realized it wouldn't be a horrible thing to say. I think he follows his own views, but I don't think he wants to offend everybody. I think that statement is sort of half right. But he's saying the same thing Peggy Noonan says, so it's a very common establishment viewpoint. And I would like to see, I would just as soon Biden didn't run, but I just don't see a replacement. And if you're really scared of Trump, I'm not sure it's the smart thing to do. Can you switch to the other audio? Because there definitely were bandwidth issues on that.
It's a bandwidth issue. What I'm doing is moving closer to the router.
Closer my router to thee.
Closer my router to thee. This is better, right? So I may do the rest of standing up.
This is fine now.
Great. If you don't mind standing up.
No,
so
it's your legs. It's your legs that are going to give way, not mine.
Yeah. No, so
this is good. This is turning into.
I'm walking backwards, which is perilous at my age. You could die.
This is turning into an OnlyFans video.
Yeah.
This is great.
Why don't look while I relocate? Why don't you show them what you're wearing below the waist, Mickey? So listen, here's the deal. My secure undisclosed location, which I sometimes am at in late August and early September, is not far from a hurricane at the moment. I mean, the winds aren't that bad, but I think that's why the bandwidth is going. But now I'm closer to the router. Okay.
I didn't hear about this hurricane.
It's called Lee, and it's the third.
Oh, right.
It demonstrated the third fastest intensification from Category 1 to 5 in the history of measured hurricanes. It's now back to 1, and it's not all that close to us. But
they're looking for anything to hype global warming. I mean, they're saying this was an especially bad year for catastrophic weather events, and that's because the hurricanes so far have fizzled in terms of damage, and they have to rope in wildfires and all sorts of other things. I mean, I'm beginning to think that all of the agencies of government are warped in pursuit of some liberal agenda. It's weird.
Scary.
Anyway, I live in California, where we've had a lovely summer, unlike the rest of the nation, very mild. We had a hurricane that completely fizzled, and so the hype just sort of rolls off our back. What can I say?
So I'm holding up my computer, Mickey. If I collapse at any point, it was in the line of duty.
Okay.
At my age, you can't hold up a computer for very long.
But I think age is a theme, going to be a theme of this podcast, because I read parts of Frank Foer's book on Biden.
Yeah, The Last Politician.
The essential mystery to me is, if this is such a fucking important election with democracy at stake, and if Trump wins, our democracy is over, why doesn't Biden move to correct the biggest remaining bleeding wound in his presidency, which is the border chaos?
The fact that he's running. Oh, no. What?
which is the border chaos. I mean, Bill Clinton would move to fix that in a second. He would realize that that's a vulnerability. Biden doesn't do that. Why doesn't he do that? It seems insane if you think that it can't be that the ethnic activists who push open borders or more open borders are that powerful in the Democratic Party. Democratic voters don't even care that about it. The base doesn't even care that about it. God, now you were really into porn. Now you're going to bed. Anyway, so I read Forrest's book, which has a chapter. I read the chapter on immigration in Forrest's book. I think there's only one, and it has Biden saying all sorts of semi-conservative things when faced with refugee policy, which controls 150,000 people who come in sort of state-sanctioned as refugees from totalitarian governments. They're heavily vetted. And under Trump, there were 15,000, and Tony Blinken wanted to boost them to 165,000. And he spent a lot of time on this, and they convene meetings, and they have, they have back and forth, and Biden just won't bump up the limit to 165,000 because he said that's too many people. They're asking me to have all these people in the country. That's too many. Well, in the back door, not 150,000, but 3 million people are coming in as bogus asylum seekers at the southern border. So why doesn't Biden know if that's how he feels? Why is he wasting all this time on refugee policy and not on an asylum policy? It's very weird. And the impression you get, it's inescapable from this chapter, is Biden is busy with these little issues they hand him, and he obsesses about them, and he has a bandwidth problem. And when he obsesses about them, he doesn't really have time for other things, and they fill up his available bandwidth. Meanwhile, the government policy is actually happening elsewhere, and they keep him busy with this refugee policy bullshit while he's not in control of the whole policy at the border. And it reinforces the idea that when it comes to this policy, he's clueless. He has the bandwidth to deal with Ukraine. He would never lose control of Ukraine policy. He knows every jot and tittle of Ukraine policy, and has actual meetings that are about the essence of what we do in Ukraine. But the border, he can't handle Ukraine policy and the border. He doesn't have the bandwidth for it. So he loses control of the border policy. That's the only explanation I could think of. The obvious explanation that comes from the book is, he's obsessing about the little things with the border and doesn't have room for the big picture. And it's very discouraging, especially if you want to beat Trump, because this is going to cost him. This is going to cost him a few percentage points. It's going to be a close election. It's insane. I just don't. That is one of the mysteries. And as an older person, I have bandwidth problems too. I mean, I sympathize. I sympathize. With the I can do one thing reasonably well. I can't do.
What is that thing, Mickey?
Obsess about immigration, or this podcast. And I don't have the bandwidth to keep 5 balls in the air the way I did when I was young. So,
it's. I mean, look, don't get me started on this age, but yeah, it's funny. I heard, Frank. I haven't read the book. Have you read you've read the book or large parts of it?
No, I've read it has like 40 chapters, and I've read maybe 7 of them. It's a good read. It's a good read. He doesn't bore you to death. He just goes from anecdote to anecdote.
I heard Frank on Terry Gross, which pretty reliably catapults the book to the bestseller list, and apparently
on Fresh Air.
And so the book has made the bestseller list at least for a week from now or something, or maybe already. But and I don't know, maybe it even happened before Fresh Air. But I gotta say, he sounded like someone not inclined to subject Biden to scathing criticism. Like on the age issue, he was like, as I showed in the book, this man is quite vigorous. He's pursuing his job with tremendous energy, and And he goes into this thing about how, age, some people think it's a linear thing, and you get to a point where suddenly there's this thing you can't do. Yeah, I think age is like that, because the things I can't do that I used to be able to do.
The bandwidth issue solves that. He does portray Biden as vigorous on his issues, and and he's still a motor mouth, and he keeps aides up at night recounting his victories at these summits, which he loves, and he has some energy there, but he doesn't have bandwidth. He has energy on the issues he cares about, but he doesn't really have the bandwidth to tackle the issues he doesn't care about, and that's and that's a problem. He's not like that famous Jim Downey skit with Reagan, where Reagan seems to be a doddering fool, and then he gets behind closed doors and says, "Okay, you go there, you start a war here, that guy has bandwidth. He does 5 things at once. He's ordering people around. Biden is not like that in Ford's book. He's a guy with a lot of energy to yell at aides and demand, to know about the interstate variations in poverty, or something, or some issue, and force them to drill down. But that's how the staff keeps him occupied while they go ahead and Ron Klain makes the policy in all the other 9 issue areas that are important to the nation. So energy, but very narrowly focused is the way I think they're reconciled.
Mm-hmm.
One of us went to Frank Ford's book party, Bob.
One of us wasn't invited. One of us, as we discussed in the Parrot room last week, was purged from the contributing editor list of the New Republic while Frank was editor of the New Republic, whereas the other of us was purged earlier while Peter Beinart was editor.
Okay. Well, anyway, I don't think that's it.
We both have our grudges.
I don't think that's it. But anyway, he was nice enough to.
By the way, look, not to really dwell on this grievance, because after all, that's what the Parrot room is for. This purge happened after I agreed to serve as the birthday present for Frank's brother. Years ago, he says, my brother, the brother who won the National Memory Championship and wrote a book about memory?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. He was graduating from high school. Frank says, my brother's he read the Moral Animal, big fan. Will you play a round of golf with him? I said, sure, Frank. Thinking naively, Frank would feel indebted after that. No. Purge. Anyway, I liked his brother. And I was glad he was a memory expert, because I figured, so the memory of my doing this favor for Frank will remain in the family forever. Sorry, I went into Parrot room. Go ahead. It's a dark place. I'm headed into a dark place.
At least you're not obsessed about this. Anyway, what was interesting was what was interesting was it was a pretty favorable to Biden crowd. It was like there was probably one guy there who was probably not so favorable to Biden. And Ali Mayorkas was there. Who's
Ali Mayorkas? But wait, who's the one who wasn't favorable to Biden? You?
Me.
Yeah. So who's Ali Mayorkas?
He's head of Homeland Security. He's the villain in this piece. He's the guy who's letting everybody in the border.
Who else was at this party? Name names. Drop names.
It was just a bunch of people. But I think he was the only cabinet official there that I saw.
Ah, shit.
But
what kind of party is that?
They were filled with love for Ali Mayorkas. So it was not a crowd that was naturally disposed to criticize Biden. I don't think Frank is faking it on Fresh Air, although I do think he may have some criticisms of Biden that he's not advertising on Fresh Air.
In the book?
I think there are some criticisms of Biden in the book, yeah.
I
haven't gotten to them, but I'm told they're there. Okay. So it's the best we have. That's all I can say.
The best what? The best book about Biden?
The best we have about what's going on behind the scenes in the Biden White House.
Well, if it's good, there must be something that's not flattering to Biden. I mean,
sure.
Your take is
the border is a classic example.
Well, but that's your little.
But that's an example.
You can't tell me Frank dwells on that in the book. Come on.
But he doesn't. He confines it to a chapter. But there is a part of he reports that Biden didn't want to kick children out. Children who showed up at the border could be kicked out under this Title 42 pandemic thing. And Biden said, I don't want to do that. So they didn't do that. that they were smart enough to anticipate a surge of children after we started letting them in, okay? And they drew up all elaborate plans for how to handle these children humanely, okay? And then they forgot about these plans, dropped the ball, the surge happened, and they were completely unprepared, okay? That's in the book. He reports that. They fucked up.
Okay.
All right? Fair.
So, what else? Should I say a little about Ukraine?
Yeah, there were two things that happened. Mark Milley said you're running out of time, and Zelensky is visiting the United States to plead for more money.
Milley said that in what sense? I missed that. Running out of time.
Couple weeks, about a week. I think it happened this week. He said their counteroffensive is running out of time
because the muddy season is coming, and they're probably running out of resources.
Yeah, all those.
Yeah. So, on the positive side, well, first of all, they've been staging. They did more of these Black Sea drone strikes and apparently disabled a Russian submarine and like a landing ship or something. There's that. These are Crimea based. These are in Sevastopol.
This is without Starlink.
Yeah, because I don't think they need Starlink. I think it's because for conventional GPS, I don't think you need Starlink. I think they were using the British Storm Shadow missiles, which I assume are GPS guided. Okay. But there's that. There's also the Ukrainians, after much fighting, are claiming a couple of villages near Bakhmut. I mean, the villages don't exist anymore. That's the way it is in this war. Every time anybody takes a village, it winds up just being completely and utterly destroyed. But there's that. Also, the Russians have not yet taken Kupiansk, which I put on our radar screen a few weeks ago because they were clearly making a play for it. And it would be a big deal if they did. But that's also in the East. All this stuff is in the East. As for the South, where the offensive's main objectives lay, I guess no real progress still. They still have not gotten, as far as anyone can tell, armor past the first main Russian defensive line, notwithstanding those reports I mentioned last week in MSM that there had been, quote, a breakthrough, a breach, or whatever. And by the way, not to get too far in the weeds, but a YouTube commenter said I had gotten that wrong. There were tanks on the other side.
Crossed
that bridge. Well, wait till you hear this. Wait till you hear this. YouTube commenter said, no, they did get tanks south of the first main defensive line. Actually, no. That's if you accept the way the Ukrainians are redefining what was the main defensive line, fine. But what basically all analysts had been considered like the first main Surovikin line is well south of Robotin, however it's pronounced, Robotna. Except, let me just say, it does brush the south. This person said, but there are tanks south of Robotna. Well, yeah, that's true, but they're not south of the true Surovikin line. That line does brush southeast of Robotna. Again, Ukrainian troops the infantry has gotten in those trenches, taken them over. That's good from Ukraine's point of view. And they've even expanded some of those holdings. But so far, since we talked, no advance beyond further advance of infantry or anybody really to speak of beyond the trenches. However, final thing, they may be consolidating forces in the area to the south, southwest, southeast of Robotna. There's some evidence of that for one final push. We may see one final push, but yes, they better hurry. And I would say, I think they've taken very heavy casualties because, go ahead.
Well, and Biden is about to make a big push for more Ukraine money, and Zelensky's coming. Don't you think people are sick of Zelensky? And whether you agree with him or not, I just think the mood is it's settling into a stalemate. We don't want to worry about this war anymore. Kiev is not endangered. There's not going to be a nuclear war. We just be happy to let it simmer and send him some money, but stop being in our face about how this is like the most important issue the American public faces, because the American public doesn't think it's the most important issue they face. And I just predict at some point they're diminishing returns and they, got to stop going to the well and asking for money and let it people are happy to let it descend into a stalemate.
I think some shift of opinion is happening the longer this goes out without significant progress. Yes.
Stalemate
I don't think everybody believes what you just said, or even maybe half of Americans, but yeah, it's the issue is, I mean, this is what I've been saying is like the one problem with Biden running again is there are wild cards. There's Hunter Biden and there's the Ukraine war. I don't think it may well be an actual campaign liability a year from now. But it's moving in some degree in that direction.
Yeah. I mean, but stalemate, it's a victory because Putin wanted to take over all Ukraine and he has failed.
I mean, honestly, I mean, remember, we thought he was going to take over the whole country. They fought valiantly. It's virtually a miracle that they have virtually all their country they had before the invasion. Now,
right.
I mean, when you take Crimea out of it, which they didn't have at that point. It reminds me of when I was in college, they had just legalized gambling in New Jersey. We went to the one casino, Resorts International, and I was playing roulette. And I was doing really well. And the friend I had gone there with, or one of them came up and said, "Bob, look at those chips." And he meant like, you've got a big stack of chips. You're doing well. And like, nobody wins at roulette in the long run. If you're a card counter and you don't get caught, you can win at blackjack in the long run. Nobody wins at roulette in the long run. And this is the way I feel. It's like, take stock of where you are compared to where you thought you were going to be. And consider the prospect that a year from now, you'll actually have less land than you do now. And there are reasons to believe that can be the case. In fact, New York Times ran a piece this week about how, surprisingly, basically the sanctions we thought were going to cripple the U.S. military don't seem to have worked. They're producing more missiles than they were before the war.
Cripple the Russian.
The Russian military. Russia's producing more missiles than before the war. They're producing 2 million artillery shells a year. That's more than Ukraine uses in a year. And on top of that, they've got all these North Korean shells coming in. They haven't done a mobilization, but they've had very aggressive recruiting, which they claim has added 200,000 or 300,000 troops. And the last thing I'd say, to get back to this offensive in the South, and I do think there will be one final burst, but it's going to get nowhere near the original objective. I told you a few weeks ago, I'd read a report that there was an argument in Ukraine between the military and the politicians about whether to just play defense or keep pushing. And of course, the politicians want to keep pushing because they want to be able to say, hey, there's been a breakthrough, give us more weapons. And they did get to the point where the gullible U.S. media said there's been a breakthrough, even though, it hadn't meaningfully been one. But that came at great cost. I mean, I'm telling you, the road down to Robatna is within easy range of Russian artillery. A lot of people have gotten killed there and elsewhere on this southern offensive. And look, I'm risk averse. I'm a worrier, but I do worry that even come this winter, maybe when the ground freezes, you may find that the wind is more at Russia's back. In any event, we have no reason to think, unless, a collapse happens here, there, something, who knows, unless some kind of wild card shows up, there is no reason to believe that Ukraine, by continuing to, not want to talk peace, basically, is doing itself a favor in the long run.
So the way it works is that the ground gets boggy and they can't have a fight, and then it freezes over and they can fight again.
Yeah, I mean, winter is not ideal, but a truly harsh winter is more conducive to fighting than these muddy seasons. Apparently, yes.
Right.
Last thing I want to say is, I think maybe one effect of these drones, the prominence of drones in this war, and this is the first war we've seen like this, where they played anywhere near this role, is to just make offense harder. And that's yet more reason to think that in the long run, we may be looking at a stalemate. So
why can't the drones lead an offense?
I mean, I think for one thing, the more you get over their territory, the more precarious it is, assuming they have anti-aircraft assets and so on. But I don't know. I'm not an expert on this, but if you look at one thing that's happened to Ukraine during this offensive is they've lost a lot of armored drones. And that's why, as I said last week, it's like the old-fashioned conception of a breach, like, oh, we broke through their lines and now armor will pour in. Well, no, there's still drones there for at least in the short term, right? So anyway.
So I think we have time for one more topic. Am I right?
I think so.
How long have we been going?
We've been going 40 minutes.
I nominate Mitt Romney's retirement.
I like Mitt, kind of. I have to confess to that. I kind of like it.
He's done some good things. He just sponsored a bill to raise the minimum wage and require E-Verify to verify the citizenship, the legality of any workers. That's a nice combination of anti-business initiatives. So he wants to raise the federal minimum wage to $11. That's not excessive. So it's a good bill. So he does some good things. He compromised on the child tax credit, imposed some sort of work requirement. That's a good thing to do. After pushing a no work requirement early, so he responded to reason. So he's a very capable guy, but he's now decided not to run for a second term in the Senate, and he's spinning it as he's just disgusted with the way the demagogues have taken over the Republican Party, and I'm not buying it because mainly because if he said he was confident of winning, he's not worried about losing. Well, if he is so fucking confident about winning and he won, he could be Joe Manchin. He could have the balance of power in the Senate. He could say anything he wanted about Trump. Trump couldn't do anything about it.
Wait.
If Trump won.
Who could beat Joe Manchin? I lost this thread here.
If Romney won, it's going to be a close Senate. It's going to be 50-48.
Oh, I see.
One way or the other.
The Republicans control the Senate.
If the Republicans win by one vote, Romney becomes the Joe Manchin-like swing vote, who could tilt the Senate one way or the other, and they will have to suck up to him the way the Democrats have to suck up to Joe Manchin. He could dictate policy the way Joe Manchin's been dictating policy. So he would have a lot of power, and he would have a lot of freedom to vent all his criticisms of Trump if Trump wins. And either way, he'd have a lot of power. And why would you pass that up? Now, the McKay Coppins piece in the Atlantic, he has a whole book on Romney coming out. They excerpted it in the Atlantic. He kept quiet about the non-running, so the story was broken by the Washington Post. But it describes that Romney sort of tried to lure his wife to go to Washington, and he instead of the glamorous apartment in the Watergate, his staff convinced him to buy a townhouse on Capitol Hill, which he's tried to make palatable to his wife with interior decorating, but she isn't buying it. So that's enough of an explanation for why he's quitting. He's not seeing his wife. I mean, I find that a totally plausible, 100% reason for renouncing an office and doing something else.
Well, is he not worried about a primary challenge from some Trumpists?
But he is. That's the point. The other reason is I think he's a little worried about missteps he's made in Utah. The first misstep was he voted for Trump's first impeachment. Okay, a stupid vote. We now know there was plenty of reason for Trump to want Zelensky to investigate Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, even if it was probably not a good idea to blackmail him with arms. But is that an impeachable offense? No. So it was just a self-righteous, bitter, envious vote that didn't go down well in the Republican Party. Utah is a very conservative state. He stabbed his fellow Senator Mike Lee in the back by not endorsing him and endorsing Evan McMullin.
That's harsh.
Very
language.
mysterious.
That's very harsh language, Mickey.
Okay, you're supposed to support your fellow Republican, and he didn't, and he. But
you just said he should stay in the Senate so he can criticize Trump. That's not supporting your fellow Republican. Make up your mind.
Trump's a special case. Anyway, we think that was on orders of the Mormon Church, which somehow or the Mormon Church had something to do with it. The Mormon Church turned against Lee for some reason, and they wanted to get Lee out. And so Romney's a good Mormon. Maybe
so
he was doing somebody's bidding.
The curtain now and seeing what's behind this.
And I also think that all the Mike Murphy and maybe some other anti-Trump consultants were pushing this Evan McMullin bid because Lee was too supportive of Trump, and it was a disaster. Lee won, the Mormon Church lost. And Republicans are pissed at Romney for not supporting their senator. So those are two marks against him. And he doesn't want to admit they were mistakes. So he says, "Oh, sure, of course I would win." Well, maybe not. He's polling at 44%. He's a Romney in Utah. He's polling at 44%. That's not good.
Well, all the more reason not to run. But doesn't your antipathy toward him ultimately just get back to his position on immigration, Mickey? Isn't that what this whole thing is about?
Well, he had a fairly strong position on immigration until after he lost. He flip-flopped, Romney style, and endorsed comprehensive immigration reform. So I do hold that against him. I think
you're bitter. And you're bitter? Are you bitter?
No, I just think he didn't have a chance to. He didn't have a chance to do any damage. He's a flip-flopper.
How bitter would you say you are on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'm more bitter that he's such a good-looking guy and so rich. That's
for his age. What is he? 72? He looks like. Did you see him on January 6th sprinting through the Capitol? That guy's in good shape. He knows how to run from rioters.
He actually wrote he wrote a memo to Mitch McConnell days before the riot saying, "This is really dangerous. I hear there are bad things coming. The Defense Department tells me there's bad things coming. We better have security in place." And of course they didn't. Why didn't they?
Well, I don't know. Mitch McConnell wasn't in charge of that, actually. But
he had some say. Presumably he could sound the alarm.
All you had to do was listen to Bannon's podcast to know.
He's a smart guy. He's a thoughtful. He's either wishy-washy or a flip-flopper. Now, I'm wishy-washy myself, so I should be able to sympathize.
You're not wishy-washy?
Yeah.
You're a staunch Trumpist.
No, I'm wishy-washy.
No, you're staunch
Trumpist. I've been wargaming with you, Bob, for 45 minutes on how Biden could beat Trump. I'm wishy-washy.
If you were wishy-washy and I kept saying you're a staunch Trumpist, you'd go, okay, I am a staunch Trumpist. That would be wishy-washy. So say it. You are a staunch Trumpist.
No, I'm not. And certainly, I would rather not vote. It's very few. There are very few circumstances under which I would vote for Trump. They generally involve arrival of aliens from outer space, that sort of thing.
I didn't say Trumpist ideologically.
Oh,
you voted for him twice, true, but we shouldn't infer active support of
I'm for controlling the borders. I'm for controlling the borders, not eviscerating Social Security, not starting needless wars. Yeah, so that if that's what, and I'm for industrial policy and not a free market in trade.
And bombing China and Iran.
All those to that extent, I am a Trumpist, if that's what Trumpist means. But anyway, I did a test. Yeah. I did a test at a radio station in California to be a talk show jock, and they said, "Mickey, you're too wishy-washy." Okay? Those are professionals who have determined under the wishy-washiness test that I am too wishy-washy. My point is, I sympathize with Romney. I would be a flip-flopper too, but he is a flip-flopper.
That was a test. If you had said, "I am not, I am not, I am not," but you probably said, "You're right, I am too wishy-washy," and they said, "See."
They were right. Yeah, I am too. They were completely right.
This is bullshit. You're not wishy-washy. That's the problem.
Otherwise, I would be a rich talk show jock, Bob, if I wasn't wishy-washy.
So wait, I want to say one more thing about Romney, and then we should wrap. Actually, I have two questions. So on Romney, I would just say, the thing is, I really, really, really did not want him to beat Obama, and I really, really, really didn't want John McCain to beat Obama. In both cases, it was because they professed a neocon foreign policy. But I always had the feeling that I wasn't sure Romney meant it. McCain meant it. Romney would have had to enact it. But I always thought it really wasn't consistent with Mitt Romney to be crazy like that. Whereas McCain,
I think that's right.
Yeah.
So that's anyway, how I felt on immigration. He was saying conservative things on immigration, but I didn't vote for him because I thought there's a much better chance of getting an immigration amnesty under Romney than Obama, who didn't have the political power to pull it off. So I voted for Obama. They were both for Obamacare healthcare, so that wasn't an issue. there's an argument that it would have been better if Romney had won, because then Obama could have run for like a second term later. He would still be on the playing field, and we wouldn't have had Hillary. So who knows how these things. There was also a completely crazy idea proposed by one of our prized commenters, Little Mickey K, who said Romney would have kicked ass if the Democrats had nominated him for president against Trump. Not such a crazy idea, but maybe a crazy idea.
Well, getting the nomination part would not be easy. I mean, yes, a lot of people could. I'll tell you, speaking of Mark Milley, talk about a guy who could beat Trump. Now, he is ruled out, apparently. He's retiring as chairman of the Joint Chiefs. He's retiring from the military, but sadly, he is ruled out seeking political office. Good example of a guy who could crush Trump. Absolutely crush.
I actually don't think either of them could crush Trump. That's the problem.
So many people could. Look, the question I just want to, before we go, question I asked while I was having bandwidth trouble and relocating, I meant to ask, I think I failed to ask, is this whole thing where so many people are raising, in the establishment even, are raising questions about or hinting at questions about Biden's age, or flat out saying, like Ignatius, no, he shouldn't run again. Is there any degree of orchestration? Is there anything behind the curtain? Because, I mean, I think Obama's great failing is to just not, Obama could do this. Obama could orchestrate something. He can make calls. He can make something happen. And he's just too busy being, making money in his post-presidency or whatever.
You don't need orchestration. Everybody let's assume the press are all good Democrats. They all know that Biden is in danger of losing, and they all know that the window is closing on the period where you can bounce Biden from the ticket. So you don't need an orchestration to tell people now's the time to be honest about Biden with your negative story.
I'll tell you in the pair what you do need the orchestration for. That's patreon.com/Parrot.
No, that's a cheap tease. Tell us now. We have plenty of stuff to talk about in the Parrot.
Not cheap tease. Well, okay, quickly.
This is like OnlyFans.
You need orchestration to keep chaos from ensuing. I mean, first of all, Obama, it's not going to happen at all, probably, if Obama or somebody like that doesn't get together with other people and initiate something, A. B, if it happens to happen without Obama and true, power brokers in the Democratic Party doing it, then chaos may ensue and it will be a bitter fight because you have too many candidates and blah, blah, blah. You need to orchestrate something. The way I think Obama helped orchestrate Biden supplanting Bernie Sanders just when it seemed like Sanders had the nomination wrapped up. Anyway, that's
I don't think I don't think Obama is doing that. It would be such a huge story if it came out, and I think chaos may well ensue.
Take a risk.
So I don't think there's orchestration going on.
No, well, I don't think Obama's doing it. My question
is the hive theory. The bees don't need a leader to know where to go. The hive.
Well, they do, because it's not going to happen, Mick. It's not going to happen. They do need a leader if it's going to happen. It's not going to happen with David Ignatius deciding to write a column. If that's all.
You think if Biden comes out against, if Obama comes out against Biden, Biden will just say, "Okay, I guess you're right. I should quit." No, then there would be there'd be a Gettysburg-like battle in the Democratic Party. It would be a disaster.
No, this we are going to save the Parrot if I do have to revisit this. I've explained before. It's not about him coming out. It's orchestration. But look, we should go. We should say, first of all, last week we announced that at the end of September, sadly, our pairing ends. As I said, and this led to controversy that we can pursue in the Parrot Room. There still will be a Friday podcast, but it won't be this. But I want to actually sincerely thank the heartening number of people who, in the comments, in the YouTube comments I'm talking about now for the public podcast, expressed genuine sadness at the demise of our particular of this pairing. As I said, I think we'll be back for special occasions, but yeah.
No, that was very gratifying to see. There were one or two people who said, you know, I even in the Parrot room, I subscribe to this every week and I hate it. These people don't know what they're talking about. But it tends to be a self-selected group of fans that actually pay to listen to us. So, but
the food here is so bad and the portions are so small.
Yeah, they said very nice things, and I appreciate it, and they had some good ideas. So, we read them all.
No, there really were a lot of heartening, nice things said, and there were also a lot said in the Parrot room, and elsewhere, and on Twitter, and I want to talk about that more in the Parrot room. But
we have
some people mistook us for saying last week was the last week. I think we've now demonstrated that was not the case. We're going through September.
Yeah, there are two more.
Yeah.
The
final one, I have logistical issues that may force me to request a midweek taping from you, but we can talk about that.
I have an eye operation scheduled for early in the week. So
early in the week,
I could have an eye patch. That would be very dramatic.
Yeah, good way to go out. Yeah,
good video. There's a lot of things to talk about in the Parrot room. There's the UAW strike. There is the Secret Service agent who has come forward with new details on the JFK assassination.
Mm-hmm.
The hunt for Tim Scott's girlfriend is focused on a mountainous area of South Carolina. There's
I missed the story totally. Didn't he just reveal only 24 hours ago that he had a girlfriend or something? What are we?
Right, but nobody knows who she is, so we're looking for her.
Oh, I see. It's not like she's an actual missing person. It's not like she got lost while hiking.
She's a mystery woman, Bob, and you know, she may not even exist.
Oh, so he said he had a girlfriend and he can't deliver her? He can't tell us? Huh. I wonder what kind of suspicions that'll give rise to. Possibly the very kind it was designed to squash, right?
No kidding. And there's controversy over the poverty numbers and whether we've the child tax credit cut them in half, and we've now pushed half the people back into poverty, and what a terrible thing this is. There's Kristi Noem, who is a governor of South Dakota, very attractive woman, who is possibly Trump's vice presidential choice, and it's definitely knives out for her. And we'll go into what's the negative story that's come out and what's the negative story that will come out. I know that. And I ran into your agent. I'm going to say what your agent said about you.
Ooh. I'm looking forward to this because he's smart enough not to say anything bad about me.
And there's
he
Mickey's
said,
Fashion
Bob's
Corner.
Intense. Bob's intense.
Yeah. And there's Mickey's Fashion Corner.
Okay. You're going to show him what's below the waist?
No, that's not part of Fashion Corner.
Okay.
I'm so annoyed that you saw that.
Yeah, it was pretty. I wasn't happy about it either, believe me. Okay. So patreon.com/Parrot Room. Look, folks, there aren't many chances to catch a Parrot Room. Just 2 or 3. How was that?
Hang on.
And they say I
what
don't
did,
have
what did you say? Sorry?
Instincts. They say I don't have good marketing instincts. But I said, you know, this is a going out of business sale. You know?
You're the P.T. Barnum of podcasting.
Well said. And beautifully said. As Lex Friedman would say, that was beautifully put. That was beautifully put. Okay. We'll see you in the Parrot Room.